Philadelphia.
Hey, Kathia.
Good, good. How are you? So I saw the movie last night, and I do have some questions. I feel a little on the fence about it, especially as a woman, as a Black woman. There were some things that were giving me a little bit of agita. So, but I decided to do some background research prior to speaking to you. So I see that this was a role originally intended for a man, and then it kind of got switched up. Let's talk about some of the situations. I get that she was getting to the point of, she was getting fed up, basically. And why do you think that we didn't get, or was it done purposeful, some more insight on who she was as a person? Because I don't want to give it away, but some of the things that we reveal on why she moves the way she does, we're speaking of her prior, her prior life, and why did you feel not being clear about that?
Well, I mean, for me, and I want to make sure I'm answering your question, as I'm addressing it as specific as possible. I mean, for me, I'm a big believer as a storyteller in showing and not telling, and also in the way we disseminate information. I want the audience to be engaged. I want people to ask questions. Obviously, I don't want people to be confused. But when you say things like knowing who she was as a person, I guess in my sensibilities, I just feel like I don't want to lay out everything about a character in front of people. I kind of want things to kind of like, through the actions and decisions and choices they make, you get a sense about who they are. So that was kind of like my North Star, and Julian as well. Obviously I can't speak for Julian, but that was my North Star when in terms of like this character, this woman in this setting, in terms of who she was.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll just add to that, like, just as a artistic sensibility, like Shaye was saying, we're trying to go the other way from a lot of sort of film tropes you might see. Like, there's a monologue towards the end of the movie that I think you're referring to, where she sort of talks a little bit about her backstory. Mm-hmm. And I think in a lot of movies that would be right up front. But I like the idea that the audience gets drawn in and is wondering about her. And then eventually they find out. And it was kind of an experiment for us to see, just sensibility-wise, we just both really like stories that avoid that kind of spoon-feeding idea. And like, I just get very engaged by movies like that. And we wanted to kind of experiment with that storytelling style ourselves.
The other thing is, I feel like I'm very much have a thing about women continuously putting themselves in positions of danger in a film. I feel like it sometimes doesn't make them the most intelligent beings. And this is a woman who was a college professor. Like, when she was continuously putting herself in danger, and like, it's specifically when she first encountered it, I'm thinking to myself, she is in the middle of nowhere encountering, as a Black woman, two white men, and she doesn't have a weapon. She doesn't have any sense of defense, which seems very unnatural for me. It really gave me a lot of anxiety. And I guess if you could help me understand a little bit why she would allow herself.
Yeah, I mean, I see like
herself like that.
I think that is, I have a lot of thoughts about this, and I kind of wish we had more time, but for me, it's like you learn that I find what she does very brave right there. I mean, it definitely produces anxiety for me, and I'm sure many audience members, because we know what can happen in that scenario if she's not careful. But, part of the mission of the movie was to get audiences of all backgrounds and races and genders to understand that fact. So, the sense of anxiety is actually an important part of bringing you on the journey with that character. Because if we saw that from another perspective, as we've seen in so many other projects, you might not even, that might not be a thought in your mind, So for me, it's like, I find, it makes sense that you, and I don't know if I would do that, to be honest, but probably nobody on this Zoom would do that But to me, it tells you something about that character that she's going to try. You know, she's going to try to use her words, as she says. She's a communicator. She has a strong vision of how she thinks the world should be and could be if people would just kind of get on board with the program. And she's going to try. And like, I think watching her navigate that is what makes it an interesting scene. And the danger is certainly there. I don't necessarily know that. Again, I don't know if I would do that, but my dad had a confrontation like that the other day with hunters in our yard, actually, strangely enough. But anyway, I just think that's what makes movies interesting, is like the characters don't always do what you would do, but that's how you learn about them, and you know, it's a character that's allowed to make mistakes as well. So
let me just jump in real quick and just when you asked the question, the thing I noticed that you specifically said you were uncomfortable with a woman making those decisions. Is that what you said?
I mean a Black woman.
So a Black woman putting herself
because of the history that we have.
Yeah. So I guess my question.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, and definitely it's your movie. Do you know what I mean? But I'm saying to you is, as someone that sits in this body, that walks through the world in this body and in this womanhood, it is just, history has shown us in a protected environment, in an environment that's populated, that's just not something that we naturally do. But if you're telling me that she moves against nature, then I understand that. Then I guess my follow-up would be, I guess for me, I was missing a little bit of that's who she is. But I understand you now making that choice versus when I was watching it, I was like, we just don't have the luxury to be that, to have, it's just not there. The buy-in is not there. Our history is not there to say, especially with people we don't know. Do you understand what I'm saying? Unless I'm missing it.
I think you're making yourself very clear, actually.
Yeah, no, yeah. I just wanted to make sure, that I understood the question correctly. Yes.
One thing I did like is she was consistent in who she was. She wasn't like, I'm cold on Monday and I'm cold and I'm warm on Wednesday. She was kind of like, for lack of a better word, like monotone, you know, very controlled, very like, very on a mission, you know.
Yes.
Was that done on purpose? Because, you know, every time she would do something and you would just be like, why? Do you know what I mean? But was it for us to be like, hey, and this is just her personality. She's just a...
No, I mean, I think what we were trying to experiment with was this idea that you become curious about her and then eventually you learn, you know? And people have different tolerances for that, obviously, like, and that's fine. It's just, you know, there is a reason that you eventually find out. She's very informed by her experiences and, you know, and her previous life doing a totally different job, you know, no spoilers. but like, you know, she has skills and experiences that, you know, your average civilian doesn't have. With her previous job. And then of course she lived through something incredibly traumatic that informs a lot of how she behaves. So the idea was to make you really curious about that and hope that there is an explanation and it's not just us, you know, hoping you'll buy it and just, you know, go home. The hope is that you become curious about it and then when you find out, you go, oh, now I understand. And then the last part of the movie is informed by that as well. But you know, and honestly, like it may not have worked. You know what I mean? Like our experiment may not have worked, but it was something we were trying, and you know, and that's kind of how we thought about it.
Last, what do you want folks to get out of it? Because one thing I will say is, it will be a conversation piece. We will look at all of these characters, which I think is a good thing. You know what I mean? I think, you know, art is subjective, but if we are talking about it, if it moves us to say this and that, then in some word you are succeeding because you're making us lean forward. You're making us question things. So what is it that you want the audience to get out of this piece or her story?
I think you said it. conversation. I think we talked. We've been asked this question and we've discussed it. I don't have. This is not a great word, but I don't have like an agenda in terms of just like I want the audience to feel something. I want them to get something. I'm trying to make them feel something. I'm trying to have them arrive at a conclusion. I think at the end of the day, when we first decided to work together on this project, we just wanted to make our art our activism. We want to challenge people's biases and preconceived notions, and we want what's happening right now, what's literally happening with us and you right now, and that's to have a conversation about what it means to be a woman, what it means to be isolated, what it means to be a Black woman who makes decisions against what people might consider the decisions a Black woman is supposed to make in any environment, let alone in this environment. So for me, it's about we just want to spark a conversation and a dialogue. That's what it's always been for me.
Yeah, and like from my end, like I'm very interested in all of my work in making people aware of the assumptions that they're making, especially cultural assumptions, like how a story is supposed to go. You know, I like the idea. I mean, we buy into stuff without thinking about it as far as story structure, and those structures represent the bigger structures. You know, and so like I want audiences to be aware that they're looking at a Western and go, okay, I think I know what's going to happen, and then because it's this character, suddenly they have to throw that away and they have to actually look at it and engage with it in a different way. We're trying to subvert this stuff and not just play right into it.
Absolutely. I appreciate the conversation.
It was so great. Thank you.
Really great.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate your questions, and thanks for holding us to
Please,
task.
I love being challenged.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you so much. Best of luck.
Thanks so much.